Okay, next up we have Ann McGee. I have a hard time with that new last name still. She has been with A&I for 7 years-ish, coming from YDOT as well. She's going to talk about a little bit of what I know, because she's talked to me a little bit about it, is the competency dictionary for A&I. So in A&I, we have a competency dictionary. I think you guys will really like this presentation. It's a lot of information that's really helpful for you to take back to your management team. So Ann McGee, I know it's very bright.
It's very bright. Well, thank you guys so much. I'm so excited to be here today. This is something that I really have a lot of passion for. It's something I've been working on since early 2000s, and it's finally coming in something that I can actually use, my HR team can actually use. We're gonna have Kimberly come up in a little bit to talk about how she uses it I'm supposed to stand, so sorry, Matt. Thank you. I'm supposed to stand here. Okay, so anyway, so we'll get started on this. Again, I'm Ann McGee. I am the agency human resources for A&I. A lot of people get me confused that we're part of HRD, and we are not. That's a division of A&I, but we are fortunate enough to just work right across the hall from those good folks, and they're so helpful. So. Not only do we work with A&I, HR manager for A&I, we have MOUs with 8 other agencies. So we're really lucky that we get to work with so many great folks out there. And there was, I think you said 6 people. We have a board, they have 2. So you guys are just fine. You can all fit into our living room, so. Okay, well, I'm gonna I asked Kimberly to help because this is the A&I website. So I kind of want to show you where the competency dictionary is because it's kind of hidden in there. So she's clicking up there on the divisions. We are actually a part of the director's office. So you want to click on the director's office and then click on agency HR. There we are. And you kind of scroll down and click on that. Hopefully it comes up. Ta-da! There it is. This is great. Thank you so much. So the A&I Competency Dictionary, it really is out there to support our employees. It's to support HR and to use competencies. I think of competencies every day in everything that we do, except for progressive discipline. That's the opposite of the Competency Dictionary. But what we're going to have here is we have the core competencies. Everybody knows what those are. Those are in our PMI. We all are rated on those. And then we have functional competencies. That's what I put together years ago. The functional competencies really help hone in on people and how they can be successful in their job. Let's see, so the model that I decided, there's so many different competency models out there. The one that I chose is the development model, because what are we really here for as HR? We really want people to be successful in their job. We want to help develop them, right? So it really helps us within all of our HR processes, which we'll get into here pretty soon. It also provides a common language that we use in our office, we use with our employees. Kimberly uses it in her training and development. So it's a common language that we all can use. Okay, it works. All right. So one of the things that really helps us, it helped me, is that the competency dictionary was really supported by our director, Dean Fawcett. Dean really sees a vision for competencies and that HR in our community, we should really be moving forward and looking at our competencies in a different way. The history of this dictionary, Brian Foster sitting down here, so I'm going to call him out on this. I worked for ANI in the early 2000s, and we started to get trained by experts in the field of competencies. And it was one of the best trainings I've ever been to, because what it did for me is that it helped me see something written, like a description, your knowledge, skills, and abilities in your JCQ, or even verbally talking to somebody. I was able to start to pick out different competencies when people were talking about them. So the training that I had back in the day was invaluable. So thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. We started to work on a competency model back then, and it just didn't take off. I think we tried it, it didn't take off at the time. Maybe it was timing, who knows. But I left and I went out to YDOT. And at YDOT, I didn't have a lot of time to work with competencies. I was talking to Ellen Teagan back there, and I said it's a lot different at YDOT than it is down at ANI. And I think DOC, I think the larger agencies where you have a diverse community, there's a lot more discipline issues that are out there. So I think that kind of took away from how I dealt with competencies, except for behavioral-based interviewing, which we've all heard about. So I left YDOT, came back down to ANI, and Dean, you're welcome. Yes, you're so welcome. And so I came back down to ANI, and Dean approached me again and said, Ann, I really want this competency dictionary. We need to get it going. So I said, all right, let's do it. So I went out there, did a lot of research, and we'll talk about the functional competencies here pretty soon. But so I decided to do a competency dictionary, and I want to be able to share it with people and help people develop those attitudes, those competencies that make you successful. So the functional competencies are added to so many different positions in our agency. When I put the dictionary together, I wanted to validate them. Is that something that looks right for other positions? So I have accountability, attention to detail, change management, collaboration, influence and negotiation, just to name a few. So I wanted to validate those. So what I did is I took every JCQ, every position at ANI, and I started to read the knowledge, skills, and abilities. What I have found during that is that we really have been concentrating on the duties of the JCQs because we want to reclassify people, right? So we need to make sure that we have all of that down pretty well. And we kind of have forgotten about competencies, the knowledge, the skills, the abilities that people need to be successful in that job. But I was able to glean out some of these organizational awareness, planning and prioritization, and I put that all down in a spreadsheet. So I validated the functional competency that way. Then what I did was I thought, and I'll get into this in a little bit about the performance management, the PMI. And I've always kind of struggled as a supervisor when I'm reading through those core competencies to say, okay, yeah, he does this, he does that well, that's commendable. And you keep reading through the definition, and he needs a little help here. But no, he does this really well. And so by the time I got done reading through that definition, I was really frankly confused on how do I rate this person, right? So what I did was with the training that we had in the early 2000s, I was able to read through that definition and start to plug in, oh, we're talking about attention to detail here. Oh, this is initiative. And I was able to see that, yeah, I can even validate it through that core competency. So what I started to do then is I've got this all together, now what? That's great, this is wonderful. And it was kind of like, well, how do I start this? So what we started to do is start looking at our recruiting. So we have a vacancy. I don't know about you guys, but it was our past practice that you have a vacancy and you get it out there at NeoGov super fast and you get someone hired really quick because you have to write a report or give report every month to HRD to say, where's our vacancies? And there's a possibility we could lose that position. Does anyone else have that? Am I the only one that has gone through that? Okay, right? So, so I get it. That's why we did it. We just had to hurry up. We wanted to get it out there. We just, smacked it out at NeoGov, and we tried really hard to get the best applicant we can. Well, we've stopped doing that at ANI. And what we've done, especially after the staffing study, has anyone else been through the staffing study? Okay, yeah, So what we realized through the staffing study is that we really need to understand what position are we actually recruiting for? Do we need it? Can we make a change? Can we take a step back for a moment and say, do I actually need to hire another HR person? Or where's another need in the agency? And that's exactly what I did. I took a step back. I lost Jared. Thanks, Jared. But by losing Jared, I thought, well, let's look at the bright side here. What can I do differently? So I took Jared's position and I reclassified it. And we have Kimberly now. And Kimberly is our trainer, our competency-based trainer. And it's just amazing, what she's doing with our agency and how she's using this dictionary. So she'll get to that here pretty soon. So that's one of the things we started to do. We started to slow down and we started to ask questions to those hiring managers. Do you really need that person? Yes, I do. All right, let's look at that knowledge, skills, and abilities. So what kind of questions can we come up with to put as supplemental questions in NeoGov? Because if you have any experience like we have, which I'm sure we have, sometimes we can get 250, 300 applications. And how do we narrow that down for those hiring supervisors? Well, let's look at the competencies. What are you looking for? What makes that person successful in that position? Let's ask questions. So we can put those into the supplemental questions, which kind of narrows down the applicant pool. In the meantime, now we have this spreadsheet of all the different competencies that make that person successful in the position. What questions are we asking? What kind of behavioral-based interviewing questions are we asking? Because as we all know in here, past behavior predicts future behavior. So let's ask those questions. Are we asking the right ones? So we start looking at that. Okay, let's look at technical questions. What do they need to know technically to be successful in that job? And content, right? So we really have slowed that process down using this dictionary. And we have, so why don't we go through that? I'm sorry, on the first page. Thank you. Just the home page where it has core, functional. Okay, and we're going to get to this thing here pretty soon here. So we have the core competencies and we have them defined. And of course, everyone knows those in the PMI system. Our functional competencies are after that. And so those are listed. You can click on there or you can go up to the top and click on the functional competencies to look for that. If you scroll down a little bit more on the front page, it tells you what you're going to find. So you're going to find the behavioral indicators, what that looks like. You're going to have a definition of it. You are also going to have a few sample-based interviewing questions. Now, there is so much out there that we didn't want to kind of convolute that whole page because you can go to Kansas. I'm sure everybody's heard of that. You can Google behavioral-based interviewing questions, and there's so much information out there. Then there's also, because it's a development model, recommended resources. And we'll talk a little bit more about that with the PMI, and then of course we'll talk about that with our training and development as well. Okay, so back to recruiting and onboarding. So now that we've slowed down, We've identified that JCQ. We've made changes maybe to it. We may have reclassified it. We have an updated JCQ. How many of you keep updated JCQs in your files? Oh, I'm so glad. That's great. And good, thank you. So, it's really important to have that for your onboarding, because we get these employees in and we throw a bunch of information on insurance and retirement, and then we send them off on their way. But do we really share with them, this is your job. This is what you've been hired to do. This is your job content questionnaire. And if you have any questions, this is your supervisor, and this is your position number, and it's up to date, and we have the knowledge, skills, abilities, and competencies that you need to know to be successful in this job. So, the next part of it is the succession planning. I think since early 2000, we've been talking about succession planning. The one thing that I can say about succession planning is that I have a spreadsheet that says these are the people that are eligible to retire within 1 to 5 years. So I know in my agency who's eligible to retire. And then with the staffing study and the great organizational charts HRD provided, we were able to identify, I think more than half of our supervisor managers are on that list, which is scary to me. Wow, how are we transferring knowledge to people, right? So again, we'll have Kimberly talk to you about how we're doing that in our training and development. But succession planning. Who here has a plan? Awesome. Would you mind sharing a little bit of what your plan is at audit, right? Yeah. Cool.
So a lot of our divisions have an administrator that supervises the whole division, and then managers that have a ratio anywhere between 6 to 10. The way that our agency is structured, there's auditors, seniors, principals, and you kind of work your way up from within the agency. It's just how audit is. The training is so specialized that for the most part, the people that are within the agency are the only ones that have the knowledge to move up from within. So the way that our department is structured, I suppose, is every manager that we have has worked as an auditor and worked their way up from within the agency. So we actually have a pretty wide pool of people that are able to fill in that next management spot when it becomes available. And same thing, we have a spreadsheet of our succession planning, and we have at least 10 out of 100 that are eligible to retire.
Within 1 year or 1 to 5? Or?
They've already hit the rule of 85 and they're just hanging out.
And what you find is they're staying around for health insurance, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. And the reason why I'm asking is that that's something we're going to be working on this year, because the only succession planning I have is a spreadsheet to say, these people are eligible to retire. What are we doing? What are we really doing with that? Thank you, guys. Thanks, guys. So that's why, that's one of the things that we're going to do. And we want to include the competencies there, which I'm sure you guys are too. I mean, if that's how, they start at ground zero and they move up. A lot of our positions are not designed like that. So one of the things that we're finding in, I'm skipping ahead. I always jump all over the place. But one of the things that we're finding is that our level right before the supervisor, we really have a gap. We have a gap in skills there. And so that's what we've been trying to kind of fill and put together as far as competencies go, and really soft skills, right? So, okay, I'm kind of thinking too, this is something we're going to be working, because we have spreadsheets on every position of the functional competencies. So, do you guys use Trello? Does anyone in here use Trello? No. I'm thinking we could use this in a Trello type of card so that we could share with everybody, and so that, we can start to develop people. So if someone says, Ann, where do you want to be in 5 years? I can say, well, I want to be in the HR manager position. Well, all right, what kind of competencies does Ann need to have in order to hit that and be part of the applicant pool? Our recognition and engagement. is also part of the model. We have an employee recognition, thank you, Stacy, a recognition team, and it's been going on for 2 years, about 2 years. We originally attached that to our values in our agency. You know, everyone has a mission, a vision, what are our values? So we've kind of attached that to it, but we've been kind of seeing that it's not working. So we're really gonna step back and kind of take a look at our employee recognition team again, and how can we connect it to the competencies? And how can we even include that in our PMIs? You know, so that's something we're gonna be working on again and kind of redoing. One of the things that I am trying to explain to you is that this is an evolving product. It doesn't just say, here it is, we're done, good luck, and it's great, and this is how you have to use it. That's not what I'm saying. I just want you to have this tool. I want you to use it any way that you need it, if you want to in your agency, and we're gonna continually evolve. We're not gonna just say, this is great, we are done with this project, and yay for us. So, you know, the PMI might be changing. We're gonna have to be changing it to hit for the PMI. So let's talk about the PMI, because that's the one that has been the most helpful for me, and it's been the most helpful for our managers and supervisors. So if you wouldn't mind going to core competency, let's pick team player. Thank you. And yep, so there's the icon, team player, which I think is great. So Kimberly, I gave her a piece of paper and said, here's my competency dictionary, can you make this better? And this is what she's done. So I really want to acknowledge Kimberly, what she's done here. But so I even had a conversation with a manager yesterday, and she said, you know, I'm looking at this, I'm trying to do my PMI for a supervisor, and leadership and developing others sounded the same. How am I going to recognize this? So I talked to her about our competency dictionary and helped her through this. But if you start to read, and it says, works with and helps others to accomplish goals and deliver, I can't read it all the way back here. You know, those are things that's collaboration. And you start to read through those definition, and I can't see it very well, I'm so sorry, but I'm gonna go, acknowledge and celebrate the achievement of others. You want to make sure that they recognize individuals' roles and limitations. So when we're talking about the team player, we're actually talking about accountability, we're talking about collaboration, interpersonal relations, and planning and prioritization, professional integrity. Do you want to click on one of those? So let's say you're trying to rate one of your employees, and they do pretty well except for planning. They are really struggling with planning and prioritization. So you can click on this, and it has sample behavior indicators. So one of the things that was really difficult for me as a supervisor is, you know, I give someone a meets expectation on team player. And employees, some employees say, why? How can I get to commendable? I want to know. I don't understand. I feel like I'm a great team player. Well, I understand that this person doesn't plan very well. They don't prioritize their work. So I now have sample behavior indicators to explain to them. Look, you don't implement the strategic plan on a regular basis. You know, you say it with one thing and you have great ideas, but you don't execute it. You don't plan for that. You don't anticipate problems. And when a problem arises, you hand it off because you don't know how to handle that. So I'm able to explain to somebody now why they got to meet expectation. Everything else is great. I can just say, you're accountable for your work. You are, you know, interpersonal relations is great, but what you really need to hone in is planning and prioritization. So then if you scroll down just a little bit more, we have a trainer that that can help put together a training on planning and prioritization. We also believe in, you know, reading. So, you know, I'm going to ask you to read 5 Secrets of Goal Setting, and then we're going to read that together, and we're going to get back together we're going to put this on your IDP next year, and we're going to really hone in on this skill for you so that you can, continue to raise the bar in that area for yourself. Anything else I'm forgetting before I move on to? All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about history of the training and development, and then I'm going to move it over to Kimberly. What is the time? I feel like I just kind of like zipped through. Well, all right, let's ask some questions before I move to Kimberly. Does anyone have any questions about what I'm saying? Does any of this make sense? Is there anything in your work processes that you could use it for? No? Okay, yes, thanks.
This website, do we get there through the HR? Hi. This website, do we get there through the HRD website, or is there a link to that, or how do we get to yours?
Will you show her again? So you want to go to the home. Thank you for asking. You want to go to the home page of ANI. Then on top there, you'll see divisions. We are under the director's office, and then under the director's office, you'll see agency HR. And then you can get to it that way. You're welcome. Any other questions? I do have a question. How many of you have a employee recognition program? Could you explain to us how is yours successful, and what is it that you guys do to recognize your employees?
So we have a policy on employee recognition, and it's a formal process. We do employees of the year, employees of the quarter, and if they are nominated or selected as employee of the quarter, they're awarded with 8 hours or 4. How many? Personal leave, yeah, but is it 8 hours or 4? 8, okay, 8 hours of personal leave. And then if they're selected as the employee of the year for their location, then they come in to central office once a year for our Corrections Professionals Week, and they're acknowledged through a formal meal and stuff, handing out the certificates and all that fun stuff.
Do you know and I hate to put you on the spot, I don't mean to by any means, but do you know what the criteria is for that?
It's peer nominated.
Peer, okay. Okay. Have you seen any abuse in that at all?
Well,
And when I say abuse, I don't mean like, just how.
well, that could happen. No, I'm kidding. I wouldn't say there's abuse. I would say that, unfortunately, I think over time, it loses its effect. Where peers might nominate someone, because they're friends or whatever,
Right.
and maybe other people don't see that they deserved it, so then it kind of takes its own, kind of gets a life of its own in a way. And so,
Yeah.
and sometimes people are like, well, I don't want to be nominated for that, so.
I think that's what we're seeing too. And, I think I almost want to start moving it towards like employee engagement. Recognition, I think, for at the purest form, I think means something. But I think after a while, people start to use it for their own benefit. Like if because we have 4 hours. But if someone nominates you, Brenda, to do it, and you're the employee of the quarter, I get 2 hours. So I think, we've seen some of that where people were just wanting to get some hours because really, we can't pay people right now. So what else can we give them? Time, right? Time is really important to people. So we're really going to be looking at using these competencies and maybe putting them into the PMI. And maybe even having it be like supervisor nominated rather than peer-to-peer. I'm not sure how that's going to turn out. So, but okay, I just remembered that I have this in front of me. So I would like to go over the core competency communication because to me, this is really important. And this was just a big aha moment for me when I started to realize that these functional competencies really mean something. When I first started to put together models, I tried to put steps, like how our target ranges are in the PMI, like, okay, so in communication, Nikki, your target range C, and Brian, your target range A, and so I was trying to always figure out these different ranges for these competencies. Do you remember that? And the one thing, if you start to work in competencies, the one advice I can give you is keep it simple. Just keep it simple. Because if you overthink it, you'll go back to what we have here. Okay, so I just want to go over the core competency communication because I can now see it. I have it in front of me. And so I just want to make sure that I cover this with you. And then if you have questions, please feel free to ask. So when you start to read, delivers clear, timely, effective transmission of information, that is communication, right? And takes responsibility for understanding others. Responsibility means accountability, right? I'm taking accountability for understanding what you're saying today, right? So that's where that functional competency can come in to help supervisors, HR people, to explain why you got a commendable, why you got a meets. Gosh, Ann, you talk all right, so you're meeting my expectation here, but you're not accountable. You're not accountable for understanding others. You're not effectively listening to someone else. Uses skill in presenting information, analysis, ideas, and positions in a clear, concise, accurate, and convincing manner. So, am I able to influence and negotiate with people? That's really important in an HR job, don't you think? Don't you think that should be one of our top competencies? Because a lot of times when people come to us and ask for advice on what kind of progressive discipline, whatever that looks like, really at the end of the day, the decision is made at the director level. So how can I speak to somebody and influence them and help them understand what I know? So these functional competencies can really help, I feel, in the PMI. And it really hones in. Now I know that PMI is going to be changing a little bit. I don't know what that's going to look like, but I do know that there's going to be some core competencies that are possibly changing. Who knows? They may be changing the definitions, and if that's the case, then we'll be back at it and making changes to that. So I'm going to turn it over to Kimberly. I want to let you know that this is the reason why this dictionary really has been created. It's a development model. The talent inventory that you get from the PMI is where I asked Kimberly to start first. Did everyone get the talent inventory? No? Yeah? No? Huh? Am I the only one that got the talent inventory? No? Okay. Well, there's a lot of different ways. Yes?
Or that PMI is becoming more explanatory in that it helps make a person better. But when you are in a small agency where 75% are better, could retire tomorrow, who have the maximum annual leave or sick leave that they have, can take time off if allowed at any time, their first response about PMI is, what do I care? There's no money involved here. How do you deal with that?
And I'll tell you how I deal with that. I'm not saying it's the right thing, and I'll probably refer it back to HRD, because I see a big smile from Tricia. But you know, for me, I have had that question, and thank you so much. For me, it's not about the money. To me, it's a good idea to give feedback to your employees. But I kind of question, do we give continuous feedback? Do we wait till planning and coaching and the final evaluation to have feedback with our employees? Because if we do, you're right, why are we even doing that? So that's one of the development, and Kimberly's probably gonna be like, yeah, so she'll be talking about what we do at ANI for that as well. So if someone comes to me with that kind of attitude, then, you know, I explain to them, your employee is gonna be here. Even though you can leave tomorrow, your employee deserves to know how well they are doing and areas that they can grow in and develop. And it's up to you to share your knowledge with that employee to make that employee successful, so that when you leave a legacy. And you leave it better than what you had when you came in. And even though there's no pay at this time, does that really matter? I mean, it does, right? I mean, at the end of the day, Tricia, I want a raise, right? But I mean, you really, you know, and talk to them, and you know, I always try to put myself in their shoes too, and show empathy with them, but explain to them, you know, the performance appraisal is about your employee. And if you hired this employee and you're developing this employee, your employee deserves that. So.
And I'm going to jump in too, because I think it's a common question. I don't think that's a novel question, because I get it all the time. And two things, and I see where the problem is with the leave, because that is a problem when you have employees that all have their max leave. They don't, you know, that's not necessarily a big deal for them. And you can be creative, and I know there in the past it was, you can't do anything and give them leave, that's what you give them. I think we can be creative and work together with the agencies and HRD to see if there's something else, especially for those that are maxed out. But on the second thing with the PMI and no money, and I get that question a lot, and I know Brenda gets that question a lot. One of the things that I think we need to get to our employees is that, yeah, right now there's no money. It doesn't mean next year there might not be some money. And what they're going to recommend and what the legislature is going to ask us is how to figure out who gets what. Well, you take the PMIs for the last 4 years that there weren't raises and you average them, and that's what they get. So I think that is the fairest way to do it. So even though there wasn't money last year and somebody got a superior, that should be calculated in for when there is a raise. So I would be careful with employees thinking that there's no money and I don't care about the rating. We will recommend that they average those years where there wasn't any money, because it's unfair for the employees not to, you know, say they had 2 superior years and then this last one, they're like, I meet expectation, which is a good rating. I want to make sure. They shouldn't be looked at just on that meets expectation. They should be looking at the last 4 years. So that's one of the things, that's my comeback when I talk to employees who have the same argument. And it's a valid argument. But it shouldn't just be about money, but we know it is. So a lot of it is about money. Yeah, me or Ann. Okay.
How do you respond when we have the reverse? We have supervisors that are giving superior scores because that is all they can give them.
That is all they can give them?
Well, as far as,
Sorry.
you know, we have no money, we wanted to have a higher rating on the PMIs. Because that's the only kind of recognition that they can be given at this point in time.
I would say that superior rating should be given when it's a superior, actually a superior rating. So
How would you respond to a supervisor when they're saying that particular comment is that I want to give them as much as I can give them, even though maybe they're not doing that type of work or level?
And I think you have to look at maybe some other ways to recognize your employees rather than giving them a superior rating when maybe they're commendable, maybe they're meets expectation.
And I'm going to jump in and say competencies is a great way to do that. So I'm going to bring it back here, but this is a great discussion, and I'm thinking maybe this is something we should talk about this
I was
afternoon.
assuming this would come up at the
forum.
too, so we'll talk more and definitely bring it up more
Absolutely.
at the forum.
I don't mean to cut you off by any means, but please jot down your ideas. I think there was a jar out, or hopefully we can just have an open communication about that. So this is something that I think we definitely need to talk about. So thank you very much for your comments. But I am going to say that the PMI for me is very important. It's important for me to get that feedback from my supervisor. It's important for me to make sure that my employees know how much I appreciate them and how much they're growing and areas that we can continue to grow in. And that is part of the reason why I decided to do the development model. Now, I am not a trainer by any means. I train a few things, but that's just not, she always laughs at me. But what I did, how I mentioned earlier with the recruiting and the onboarding, I looked at a position and I created a trainer and development position. Kimberly Fields had worked at A&I years ago with Matt McGee and HRD, and I was absolutely thrilled when I saw her application come in, and what I did to her, I'm so sorry, but you've done such a great job. What I did when she came in is I said, look, I need us to start developing our employees, and I want us to do a year-long training. And this is truly what I said, and she's put such wonderful thing together. I said, and I want a tier 1. I want us to start training those levels right before that supervisor, those soft skills, and let's start training people up. Let's start giving them the tools they need to be successful, because we are going to be losing, possibly our supervisors here in the near future. Are we ready to replace them? And I really believe, if at all possible, promote from within. I think that's really important. So I handed her a paper copy of the competency dictionary, told her briefly, this is what I really want, and Kimberly's expertise has really put it into, it's just been an exciting year to watch. And so I'm gonna turn it over to Kimberly for her to go over and explain what she has done with the competency dictionary. So thank you, guys.
Okay, I actually need everybody to stand up, and I'm going to demonstrate something that can help you if you need a little bit of confidence. I'm going to do the Superman pose. If you have a broken wing, you can just do it with one arm, but this is the Superman pose. You got to do the elbows. Get your hands out of your pockets. Okay, all right. So you can actually do this if you need a little bit of confidence, yeah? So when Anne brought me into her office and she handed me that competency dictionary and said, you're gonna develop a multi-tier leadership development program, and there's no precedent whatsoever, I did a whole lot of this. Okay, you got it. Now you can sit. But that's a good trick. I recommend it highly. So I want to talk about just the model real briefly. I don't know if you can see it very well, but the way that we vision the competency model in A&I and for the agencies that we serve is at what, 8, 6, 8, 9? I don't know. I lose track. I go back to the list. But we have the competencies in the middle, and it's really a common language. And then we have the performance management orbit, where we're using that same language when talking about performance management, talking about employee recognition. We have the HR orbit, making sure we're using the same language when writing the recruitments, and not we, they, writing recruitments and planning succession. We're using the same language than when I am communicating about training and development. When I'm trying to find the needs, I'm listening. I'm listening to what people are saying they need, and I'm thinking of it in terms of the competencies. That's how I start to figure out, well, what is it I need to target? And then when I'm communicating to employees what training I have to offer, I do it in terms of the competencies. because then they know, okay, this is supporting this part of my job. This is supporting this part of my performance evaluation. So it's really nice to have that common language. And that's really what it's about. It took me a year to really get that to snap into focus, that it's just a common language. And if I speak the language of performance management, I speak the language of HR, people will know what I have to offer them in training and development. So let's talk about training. Can you go to the next tab? All right. So would you hit Control-0, make it a little bit smaller? Okay. So this is my page of training, and you cannot get to it because it's just shared with the employees I serve. So we have our employees in our agencies that we serve, because we're not HRD. We're agency HR, we're part of the director's office, and we have a set number of employees and agencies that we serve. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what we have developed for employee development. As Ann mentioned, we had a talent inventory. Did you mention the talent inventory? She mentioned the talent inventory that identified that we really needed to develop employees to be ready for their first supervisory position. And we needed to develop the people who maybe were new to being supervisors. And so I developed something called a Leaders Academy. And it's a year-long series. People meet 8 times over the course of a year. There's a reference to the date that's in there. But what we've done with that is I identified what's generally considered to be emerging leadership. What are those competencies generally? And I actually brought a proposal to Director Dean Fawcett, and I put it in terms of what I had found out there. And he said, well, how does this support the competencies? And so I went back to my office, and I then shifted to the language of the competencies, because it was all in there, but I wasn't using the words of the agency. So that was my first lesson in realizing, oh, I need to actually adopt our language. And so I changed the language to identify all the competencies that we're hitting the Leaders Academy. And we're hitting all of the core competencies. You can't not hit that in a year-long series. So that's one thing that we've done to start our employee development program. And I started offering ongoing workshops. So we have workshops on things like coaching, giving ongoing feedback through coaching. We really want to promote the idea that feedback happens year-round, all the time, and the performance evaluation should not be a surprise. They should know what's coming in that performance eval. And this year, now that we have the Leaders Academy pretty well established and we have some ongoing workshops established, we've expanded our employee development agency-wide in A&I. We have a year-long learning campaign where we're focused on what does it mean to communicate. So we started with that first core competency, and we had a kickoff meeting where we let everybody know what is this learning campaign, which was essentially some different training topics. Effective listening was one of them that target that competency. And then also we have monthly resources that go out to employees in the newsletter. So it's really just a shared commitment to thinking about that competency for the year. And then we will be celebrating the campaign at the end of the year. So that's an agency-wide effort, a way that we've used the competencies to drive our employee development efforts. And then this year, just through some grassroots sort of efforts, I started coaching people through individual development plans. So I actually had a participant in my Leaders Academy approach me afterward, because I started to develop some pretty close relationships with people in that series. She said, I'm really struggling with keeping my cool. I am getting angry, and you know, some of it's when I feel like somebody else is being negative, then I get mad, and then I either cry or I scream. And she knew I can't do that. I can't do it anymore, but I need help. And so we actually went through the process of using Halogen's forms for creating a development plan, and we identified the training that I had to offer. We identified a book that I thought would be a great read for her. We identified some things that she can do on the job to help develop those competencies. And now we have it documented in Halogen, and she's checking in with me when she needs to. I check in with her when I haven't heard from her, and we just got that relationship going where we have targeted that competency, and we put it under personal effectiveness. So that's how we're sort of expanding our employee development program. It's been really exciting and terrifying to build that from the ground up with no precedent, but I enjoy what I do. And I have to say, you know, this competency dictionary, all I did was make it pretty. The work that went into finding the sources, the behavioral-based interview questions, that was all Ann. And so I just had the pleasure of making it pretty. One thing I do want to point out, this is my list of upcoming training. And what I've started to do to communicate what competencies we're targeting is that I actually have an icon. And these match Halogen. I don't know if you recognize them or not, but these are the same icons you see in Halogen. And so the speech bubbles are representing communication. And if you go in there, you can actually click on it, and it takes you back to the competency dictionary. And so that way, when people are looking at the training that's coming up, maybe when supervisors are looking for training that they might recommend to their employees, they have that quick glance view of, you know, what are we hitting with those upcoming training opportunities. And if you scroll down, something else we're doing is we started book studies, and that's been a fun way to capture some employees who might not come to the workshops but are really interested in book studies. And again, I identified the competencies that are hit by that book. And that competency is really planning and prioritization, which connects back to personal effectiveness and then developing others. So you start to see that relationship there. The book Mojo actually drives what we're talking about this afternoon after lunch. And so we'll be talking about planning and priorities after lunch. It's kind of in a nutshell what we're developing. I'm actually really curious to hear what's happening in other agencies in your efforts to develop employees. Anybody want to talk about how you're developing employees' competencies? Yeah, you want to bring the mic over? It helped Matt out.
Are you planning on opening up those training sessions to HR across other agencies, or is it just within A&I for now?
Well, we serve A&I, and then we have our MOU agreements with other agencies. If it were up to me, I'd say, yeah, bring everybody in. But that doesn't work with the budget the way it is, because we would be diluting the quality of the MOUs that we have if we just suddenly made it free for everybody else. Does that make sense? Sure. And so the way we're structured, I can't, even though I wish I could.
That would be nice.
Yeah, so talk to Tricia.
You know, one thing I wanted to say, what I'm seeing, which is really great as an HR person, is that some people that have been in my office a lot, maybe not necessarily a progressive discipline, but there's always an issue. Or if I do investigations, that one particular person is always involved in it somehow. This is the same person that reached out to Kimberly. So this is, you know, something that she's starting to develop. She's starting to become aware, right? And that's really what, honestly, that's what we really want our employees to do, is just be aware of what you're doing. And you know, developing them and developing soft skills is such a great way to do that. It's really helped our employees. It's helped me in our office. And so, you know, I'm seeing some really great things out of this.
I'm a big fan of having core competencies as a state, because if people master those competencies, they can master the technical skills that go with their jobs. You really can. So they're an avenue to being successful in any position. So nobody, go ahead. Let's bring the mic back there. I have to look out for my buddy Matt with the audio, because we were on the same team back in the day.
I guess this is really kind of directed at you, Tricia. I can see the value in this so much. You know, Candace asked about a larger agency, if it's available to them, but even from a small agency perspective where we do not have full-time HR people, this would be such an awesome tool for us to be able to tap into. Okay.
I definitely get that. I think the small agencies in particular are the ones who generally, and it's not a negative comment, it's just a matter of that they're a small agency, they have fiscal, they have 15 hats they're wearing, that one of them is HR. They don't have time to go through this. So it's a double-edged sword. I mean, we can't share it, we being, it's not even me, it's ANI HR, can't share it without having that, and I'm gonna say a dirty word, the shared services model. This is part of what a shared services model could look like, if that's a way that the state wants to go. I don't know if we can piecemeal it. I would love to be able to say, we're gonna just do this part as shared services so everybody has the opportunity to use it, because I think the work on this is brilliant. And it would help large agencies and small agencies. So I'm not sure, depending on how things play out, how the next governor looks at things, I would love to be able to say that Ann should be able to share this and we do it. That's really not my decision to make. So I think it's something that we understand is a great tool for everybody. It's just a matter of how do we do that and how do we do it in the proper way.
That said, I'm happy to be a resource as an individual. I really can't come to your agencies if you're not one of our MOUs and provide the training to you, but I'll share everything I've developed.
And I'll throw out from transportation, because we're not quite as far along as you are, but we have what we call a standing training committee, and we've been breaking ours down by classification family, and we're doing both functional and the core competencies and defining those, and then of course the courses that need to be taken to be able to get there. So we're trying to do, it's a pretty big project. We've made it through all of our maintenance side. We're finishing up construction here shortly. We're going into trades next and that. So once we get that done, we will work with HRD and everything, because we do want to share that. Some of it's going to be really specific to some very types of work and that kind of thing, but we brought in a learning management system because that's crucial to be able to track everything. So we brought that in, and I know that Jim Boyd, who is our training manager, has started the process of aligning up all of our competencies and the coursework that we currently offer and that type of thing, and we'll have that available once we get that a little bit farther along. So.
And I think, this is Tricia again, I think that it's so important when you look at what transportation's doing, what Department of Corrections is doing, what health is doing with their dashboard, all of that stuff that all the agencies are doing as a standalone agency, it would benefit all of us in this room. So I think it's important to think about, and that's another reason why we need to get together more often, I think, is to just talk about what we're doing in our agencies, maybe what HRD, sometimes you know what HRD is doing or what we're not doing, but you don't know what ANI HR is doing. And they've come up with this great model, just like Transportation, Corrections, Health, and the small agencies. To be able to share that with the agencies would be huge. Just that part of it, just this little part of it would be great to be able to share with the other HR in the room. So I think it's important that, another reason why we all get together.
Any other questions or comments? She's coming. She's got the mic. She's coming.
I have a loud voice, so I don't know if I really need this, but I'm a transplant from another state. I've worked for 4 state governments. So what I've seen in the past is some states, they offer classes, and it's kind of up to the employee to make the case. I really think this would help me improve my customer service, or help me improve my skill set or whatever, and they could make their case to the agency, and the agency could decide whether or not to approve that class for that person. And they had supervisory classes, they had all kinds of classes, even mediation classes or dispute resolution classes, that type of thing. And that's something I haven't really seen in Wyoming that much. I mean, maybe it's because I'm new that I haven't seen these types of things. But I always thought they were great. I was always going to get around to taking a couple of those classes. So anyway, I just thought I'd share.
Thank you, because I agree too. I think there's a lot of classes and certifications that HR people should be going through, and that's I'm just in one agency, I'm just an HR manager over here, but I totally agree with you. Mediation is so important. I think that's a really important skill to have in HR, you know, being able to reframe back, actively listening to someone, showing empathy, really diving down deep into where's the issue, like what Brenda was talking about earlier. I do have a group, a couple of groups that I could share with you who, if you're interested in mediation training, that I could give that information to you, so.
I do think that's important, and I want to say that at least at A&I, we kind of do that. In fact, Stacy came to me and said that she wanted to get her CCP. We worked it out. It's not a cheap program. Nobody has any money, but we figured out a way to get her CCP through her pitch to me and to Dean about why now is the time for her to get that. So if you want to talk about that.
Well, I'm the compensation coordinator for A&I. I feel like it's important to have the certified comp professional certification because, I mean, every day I run data for the state, I run numbers, I come up with numbers for legislators, I come up with numbers for comp commission. So it's important to validate that I know what I'm talking about. So by taking courses through World at Work, I feel like I'm getting closer to that point and doing my job. So.
Is there any other questions? Well, Kimberly, thank you. And thank you all very much. I hope that you guys get out there and look at that competency dictionary. I am always available. I could talk competency like 8 hours a day. So if you guys start getting into it, you have any questions, you want to just maybe run some ideas, you know, anything you want, just let me know. I'll be more than happy to explain something if it didn't make sense. Again, continue to look at it because we're going to continue to work on it. So what you see today, maybe in 6 months, it might look a little different. So unless if you guys have any other questions, thank you guys so much for your time. Yep, one more, sorry.
Earlier, you talked about a staffing study. I'm just curious, is that something, an informal process that was done within your agency, or are there tools for somebody trying to tackle that for the first time?
I am going to refer that to Tricia Bach. They do have a great tool, though, just so you know.
It's right here. The tool's called Jared. What agency are you with? Okay. We're actually writing the report right now in the back of the room. It was for 19 agencies that we did it for. It was a governor initiative. So we do have tools, and we could probably have Jared look at your numbers. It's phenomenal, the work that went into it. And it's really a benchmark right now. This first report is going to say, hey, here's where we are and where we can get to in the next year. And each of the agencies, they did a great job. I'm actually looking at corrections right now that I'm going to have to talk to Brenda about after. They have 24 pages of what they did as a result of the staffing study. So I think each agency had a chance to look at it and say, wow, we have a lot of one-to-ones, and we didn't realize we had that many, one supervisor to one employee. Now, sometimes that's important, and you need that, and especially in a small agency, you're going to have that. So we do, and if you call into our office, I can probably put you in touch with Jared, and he might be able to help you with that too. So, but it was just the 19 agencies that we looked at statutorily from the governor's directive. So if a lot of you in here are in a smaller agency or with the boards, you weren't included in that because you're a smaller agency, that it's just different in a smaller agency. We touch on that in the report too, to say why we didn't look at the one-to-ones in the board, because there's only 2 people in the board. That's why they're a one-to-one. There's not a lot of analysis there. So get in touch with us and we can help you with that.
All right, well, thank you guys very much. Appreciate your time.
You get a bonus break.